Then the question is, how do we love Him? How do we love Him? How do we translate everything that we know into something that we do and something that we feel? So we have to start increasing the love for what that we have for Him, alayhi salatu wassalam, so that it could displace other love. So again, it's nothing that's going to happen immediately, instantly, but it's a process and it's a struggle. But the more that you have of this, His love, the less that you're going to have of that other human love, right? And no one is asking you to stop loving humanity, stop loving people, stop loving your family. We're just saying have more of the love for Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. So the first thing that should be done is to follow Him. Follow Him. Okay? Even if that love is not entirely there, you push yourself to follow Him alayhi salatu wassalam. And Ibn Rajab again, he says, إِنَّمَا تَتِمُّ الْمَحَبَّةُ بِالطَّاعَةِ كَمَا قَالَ تَعَالَى قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ. He says, love is only fulfilled through obedience, is only completed through obedience. As Allah said, say, if you love Allah, then follow me and Allah will love you. So it's all tied to love, following Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. So you say, I want to love Him more. What's the first thing that I should do? Follow Him. Follow Him. In big and small matters, follow Him. Because the more that you follow, that practice will open doors of love for you. Will push you closer to Him, to how He lived and what He said and how He slept and woke up. All of these things. You'll start behaving like Him, moving like Him, talking like Him. And that will make you love Him more. So the more that you obey and listen, the more that you surrender to what He said, the more that you will love Muhammad alayhi as-salatu wassalam. The second thing is to learn more about Him, to study His life. And frankly, to be honest, we don't really know Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam, not really, not well. We know certain things about Him, here and there. Sometimes it's very superficial. But if someone were to ask you, do you know Him alayhi salatu wassalam, like, do you know two things here? Do you know His life in detail, His biography? What He lived, how we lived, what He went through, the struggles, the battles, the sacrifices. So His biography, do you know it in detail? So if you don't know Him, how will you love Him? Right? Doesn't that make sense? How could you love someone that you do not know? Because that's the first thing. We need to study His life, alayhi salatu wassalam. The second is we need to read His wisdom and words. So again, how can you love Him alayhi salatu wassalam while have not listened to Him? So you don't read the hadith. You don't have a book of hadith. Right? You don't understand what He said. You don't appreciate His wisdom. You don't know what He said about A, B, C, and D. So you're distant in terms of details of His life, distant in terms of His wisdom. How could you love Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam? So we need to fill that gap with studying His life and studying His sayings, the ahadith. The more that you read His ahadith, the more that you will get connected to Him, feel closer to Him. You'll be able to quote what He said, and it will influence your mind and it will influence your heart, and then you'll start to also change because of it, and then you'll start to love Him alayhi salatu wassalam. The third thing is asking for it, because this is something that is a gift from Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is an honor. Loving Allah and loving the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam is an honor. So ask for that love, and ask for ways to attain it, and ask for ways for it to be preserved. So dua. And also salah and salam upon the Prophet alayhi as-salatu wassalam. And he said alayhi salatu wassalam as a motivation for us, man salla alayya wahida sallallahu alayhi ashra. The one who says salah once for me, Allah says salah 10 times for him. So if you say sallallahu alayhi wasallam, how many times does Allah say salah for you? 10 times. And salah is praise and elevation. Then when you say Ya Allah, give salah to Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, means elevate him. And if Allah does that to you, Allah is elevating you. So the more that you do it to the Prophet ﷺ, the more that you get from Allah. But it also keeps you connected to him ﷺ. You keep mentioning his name. And the more that you mention someone's name and you feel close to him, the more that you will end up loving him bi'idhnillah. There are a couple of hadith here that we'll talk about when it comes to saying salah and salam upon the Prophet ﷺ. So I'll come to them inshallah. But before that, I'll just briefly talk about what it means to love him. What loving him means, even if we're not at that level, but we are striving, what it means is that you want to be completely like him. Right? You want to copy everything that he has done. And you know that he presents the best guidance and example. No other human has that status. And you shouldn't give any other human being that status. So the words of Muhammad ﷺ are the ones that are always accurate. No other scholar that comes after achieves that status. And no other human being living today, whether they are Muslim or non-Muslim, should ever be awarded that status. But only Muhammad ﷺ, everything that he has done, big and small, are things that take you and lead you to Allah Azza wa Jal. So appreciate him as the best guidance giver. So if he tells you to do something, even if it goes against what you like, you take it. And if he tells you to avoid something that you like, you accept it from him. Because you know that his choice is better than ours. Otherwise, our love for him is flawed and incomplete. Then we love ourselves more. So loving him means to be like him. And there is no, by the way, there is no minor sunnah or big sunnah. There is no, if you love Muhammad ﷺ, you're not going to filter the sunnah based on, well, is this an obligation or is this only recommended? Because sunnah could be an obligation as well, right? I know that's different terminology, but I'm using sunnah here to mean his example. So his example sometimes could be an obligation. And his example sometimes could be only recommended. So they said something about the Sahaba which is really curious, which is different than what we do today, is that when they receive something from the Prophet ﷺ, they don't ask first, is this an obligation or a recommended act? Because what do you mean when you're asking, is this an obligation or a recommended act? What are you implying? Should I do it? That's the question. Like, do I have to do this? Is this an obligation? Because someone tells you an obligation, you say, okay, it's an obligation, then I have no choice. But if they say it's only recommended, what's the reaction? I don't have to do it. Right? So they didn't ask that. If the Prophet did something, they'd do it. And only when they fail, that I won't be able to, is this an obligation or is it recommended? Then they get their answer. But their attitude, the default position is what? He did it, I'll do it. That's love. That's emulation. Right? That's appreciating his guidance. Because not an investigative telling him, do I have to do it? Do I really have to do it? And why did he ask you to do it? Why did he recommend it? Unless that it is to your own benefit. So that's what it means. There's nothing called minor or small sunnah.